Hello and welcome to Investment Insight, your clear take on the markets. Let's get started. Today, we're undertaking a deep dive into a stack of sources. And these really map out what we think are the world's two biggest economic shifts right now. It feels like it's time to, well, retire the old playbook. The game's fundamentally changed. It's not about temporary trade spats anymore. No, it's shifted to permanent technological separation. We're specifically looking at this transition, from a trade war to a tech cold war, and how this huge global shift combined with mega trends like AI is creating these structural growth supercycles in certain industries, things investors really can't ignore.
That's exactly it. That's the mission here. Our goal is to cut through the daily market chatter and really get a handle on the fundamental paradigm shift, this long-term technological separation decoupling, as they call it. And then the crucial part, identify the structural investment opportunities tied to these massive kind of non-negotiable global trends. We've used the Korean market as a really powerful case study, because its specific sectors perfectly show where structural profit seems, frankly, almost guaranteed, regardless of what the local economy is doing day to day.
Okay, so let's unpack this foundational theme first, this fundamental shift in the U.S.-China rivalry. Our sources, they're pretty much unanimous on this. This moved way past a simple tariff argument months ago. We are now, it seems, in a full-blown technology conflict. Both sides are digging in for the long haul. And at permanence, that's the critical thing for investors to grasp, right?
Absolutely. To really get the Chinese side, the key marker is the upcoming 14th plenum, the 4A. Now, this isn't just another policy meeting. Think of it more like a declaration of economic ideology. State media, internal documents, they all make it clear. China is launching a total national mobilization for technology self-reliance. That's SATNA. And this intense focus, it's a direct political reaction to what Beijing sees as the U.S.'s chokehold strategy, in critical areas like semiconductors, high-end manufacturing, AI, biotech. For them, it's about national survival, not just market efficiency anymore. To use that analogy from our sources, it's like they've declared they're going to build every single part of their own car, engine, screws, everything. Why? Because their main supplier just proved they can cut them off and probably will. This national imperative, it's being cemented into law.
Right, and then there's the evidence for prominence coming from the U.S. side.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really interesting. Our sources flagged that very firm, unblinking declaration from the Commerce Department. Secretary Howard Redneck, he stated it quite clearly. Export controls on advanced tech, think leading-edge chips, AI tools. These are purely a matter of national security. And that statement, it feels like a watershed moment. It definitively puts national security above commercial interests. The crucial takeaway here is that these controls, they cannot be traded away. They won't be. Not for, say, promises from China to buy more agricultural products. It's a permanent line in the sand, non-negotiable, and it's being enforced by government policy.
So, okay, if the security angle is truly non-negotiable, what does this actually mean for you, the listener, the investor? Well, it means the door to negotiating away these core tech restrictions. It's essentially locked. Probably forever. That old assumption of one big global market, the one that drove so much growth for it, that's outdated now.
Okay, if this split really is permanent, does that mean companies have to completely pick a side, exit one block entirely? Or can they, somehow still operate and profit in both? What are the sources saying about the reality of this bifurcation?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Our sources suggest that, look, completely exiting is probably unrealistic for most of the big multinational giants. But the risk of this bifurcation is extremely high. They basically have to build two separate compliant supply chains. If they don't, they face massive risks. And think about the costs already sunk. Building new U.S.-based chip foundries via the THEPS Act, ripping up supply chain contracts that are decades old, reversing course now, it's just too costly. Politically and financially, it seems like there's no going back. So therefore, the investment universe is, yes, definitively splitting. Two distinct blocks. A U.S.-centric tech block and a China-centric self-reliance block. When you look at your portfolio, you really have to ask, which side of this wall are my companies built to operate on? Because trying to straddle that middle ground is getting exponentially harder.
All right, so if the world is indeed splitting, how do investors navigate this new map? Let's get into the concrete strategies our sources are suggesting. How do you potentially profit from both sides of this divide?
Okay, strategy number one focuses on China. And it's relatively simple in concept. Follow the government's money. Since economic efficiency is now, taking a backseat to political survival, the Chinese government is pouring absolutely astronomical amounts of state funds into this technology self-reliance drive that 4A blueprint we mentioned, think of it as the treasure map. It shows where guaranteed capital expenditure is going. And the investment pivot needs to be pretty drastic. You got to move away from the old market darlings, residential real estate, maybe some internet platforms, and shift focus heavily toward these state prioritized sectors. We're talking semiconductor localization, the equipment, the materials needed to make chips in China. Also, industrial automation, robotics to counter labor pressures, and deep tech like aerospace, specialized biotech. These are the national projects getting funding no matter what the market cycles look like.
Okay, that's the China side. Now, strategy number 2, focusing on the US and its allies. This is about looking for the reflection benefit. This feels like a really critical strategy. When the US government uses national security as a reason to block Chinese tech access or imports, well, who steps up? Who fills that sudden mandatory gap in the US and allied markets? This strategy really targets the mechanics of this change. We need to pinpoint the companies that are, frankly, the unavoidable beneficiaries. So that means companies getting CHIPS Act subsidies for building semiconductor production here in the US, the onshoring winners. They get government money and guaranteed demand. It also includes firms actively setting up de-China supply chains for critical stuff like rare earth elements. The ones used in high-power magnets, essential for defense, for EVs. These companies are directly replacing a supplier that was previously just assumed to be global.
And strategy 3, this is really a necessary mindset shift. It connects right back to that idea of permanence. The sources are very specific here. They warn against structuring your portfolio based on hoping for some kind of short-term agreement. Those trade talks scheduled for November, they're probably not going to be a game changer. Why? Because they'll likely focus on commodity purchases, maybe agricultural goods, not the core security issues. Those are off the table. So you have to structure your portfolios for long-term technological rivalry, for conflict consolidation, really, betting on some sudden resolution that magically brings the two blocks back together. That seems like wishful thinking at this point. The smart money, according to these sources, assumes this rivalry is fixed, at least for the next 5, maybe 10 years.
That macro picture, yeah, it can feel a bit abstract, but this global split, it's already creating clear structural winners. So to make this tangible, let's move from that high-level conflict down to concrete structural opportunities. And our sources use the Korean market as the perfect proxy here. Why Korea specifically?
Well, it sits, geographically and economically right between these two giants. And precisely where they conflict, that's where guaranteed long-term growth seems to be emerging.
A genuine supercycle.
Exactly. Let's start with theme A, the AI-driven power supercycle. The driver here is pretty straightforward. It's simple physics combined with exponential growth. We're dealing with two massive parallel demands hitting at the same time. First, these absolutely explosive AI data centers. Second, the spread of electric vehicles. And both just devour huge amounts of electricity. Just think about the scale for a second. An advanced AI data center, it can consume as much electricity as a small city. All that computing power generates enormous heat. It needs high voltage transmission, often over long distances. This demand surge requires a massive and frankly urgent overhaul of the old aging power grid infrastructure, especially across the US and Europe.
And that urgency, that translates directly into long-term contracts for very specific manufacturers, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and the specific detail here is quite powerful. Korean transformer and power equipment companies, they are securing record-breaking massive U.S. orders that now extend deep into 2025's third quarter, even beyond. They're filling that urgent demand left by creaking infrastructure, and interestingly, often stepping directly into the gap left by restricted Chinese products. So yeah, AI is unexpectedly turning these specialized power grid suppliers into these high-visibility champions.
Okay, now theme B, geopolitical risk as a growth opportunity. Let's focus on defense and energy here. The global security climate is demanding reliable partners, it seems. And K-Defense, or KK is capitalizing on that need for trust. K-Defense has really proven itself on the world stage recently. It's expanding fast. Beyond its traditional markets like Poland and the Middle East, now it's moving into key NATO members. Think Romania, Norway. It's moved past just being seen as cost-effective. Now it's viewed as a trusted weapon brand. Why? Because of verified performance in actual conflict zones and, crucially, fast delivery times. This isn't about one-off deals anymore. It's securing long-term military partnerships. That provides incredible earnings visibility, potentially lasting decades.
And the energy transition piece also has these significant kind of hidden beneficiaries, specifically in specialized components. Let's look at fittings, basically. Specialized piping components and nuclear. Global energy instability, driven by all this geopolitical risk, has locked in massive U.S. LNG terminal projects. The goal is securing domestic supply. And these huge U.S. LNG projects, they're driving major high-value contracts for specific Korean fitting companies. Companies like Taekwang or Sunkwang Ben, they're moving past just sample testing now into full-scale contract execution. Big money. At the same time, you have the global nuclear renaissance, driven by European nations rethinking energy security, plus renewed political support in places like France. This is creating really clear order visibility for key reactor makers. Bids are underway in countries like the Czech Republic, Poland. These aren't short-term fads. These are infrastructure needs that will span a decade or more.
All right, let's connect the dots back for our listeners. Back to your investment decisions. Why these specific sectors, power infrastructure, defense, those specialized fittings, nuclear, why are these so structurally attractive right now? Our sources say they share two key characteristics, things that virtually guarantee high visibility and stability.
Okay, the first one is understanding characteristic one, order-based industries. The source material calls them O1ALO. Put simply, these are companies that secure large, long-term contracts. The capital expenditure involved is huge, and the production timeline is really long. Think about building a nuclear reactor or a massive high-voltage transformer. These take years from the moment the contract is signed to the final payment.
Exactly. So that massive order backlog they build up, it acts like a reliable forecast, almost guaranteed in a way. When a defense contractor, say, has 5 years of orders already booked solid, the revenue for the next few years is essentially locked in. This gives them incredibly high earnings visibility compared to traditional manufacturing, where results can swing wildly based on quarterly consumer whims. When these backlogs are at historic highs, as they are now in some of these sectors, you can reliably project stable future growth.
And characteristic two is oligopoly structure and the pricing power that comes with it. These fields we're talking about, advanced transformers, high-value fittings designed for extreme temperatures or pressures, complex integrated defense systems, they require incredible technology, complex safety certifications, massive upfront capital investment. All this creates an almost impenetrable barrier to entry for newcomers. For instance, just getting a new type of fitting certified for use in a high-pressure U.S. LNG terminal, that can take years and millions upon millions of dollars. So because new competitors can't just jump in easily, the established leading companies in these niches, they maintain strong pricing power and therefore high profitability over the long term. The clear strategy our sources suggest is pretty straightforward. Focus on the no one company, the established market leader in each of these structural growth niches.
That summarizes the core message perfectly, I think. Don't chase the short-term market noise. Don't bet on political negotiations that, well, seem like non-starters when national security is the real driver. Instead, find the structural shifts, the permanent tech Cold War, the guaranteed AI power supercycle, this geopolitical realignment, and then invest in the national champion tech stocks, the companies that have those clear long-term order books backing up their future revenue.
And maybe a final provocative thought to leave you with. This permanent shift to two tech blocks, it might mean that overall global GDP growth slows down a bit because of the fragmentation, but the growth for the specific companies that come to dominate their respective blocks, that growth could become highly concentrated, potentially explosive. So the real question is, who do you believe will be the true champions? The ones that not only survive, but actually thrive in this newly divided market? Because they won't just benefit from growth, they'll likely benefit immensely from that concentration.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the markets. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button.